So where should a complete beginner start their game dev journey?
They should start by figuring out what it is that they would like to invest a lot of time into. What particular role? That's a good place to start. And the two big buckets, art and programming, they're the big buckets. And I think if you get into, say, art, then you might get in there and say, well, I really like designing games and thinking up ideas. I'm more of a game designer. Maybe you can then branch into being a level designer, where if you've got some artistic skills, that's very useful, very important to being a level designer. And likewise, over in programming, you might get in there and say, well, I'm more interested in, I really like user interface and user interface programming or gameplay programming. A lot of indie game developers are gameplay programmers. They're making the thing move around and bump and explode and stuff. That's kind of what you do as an indie game programmer. So find what you like and sample, like take some time to play around in Blender, take some time to play around in Unity or in Unreal. And obviously being a course content creator, I would recommend taking a course in the thing that you're interested in. And if you're thinking Unity versus Unreal, I don't know, what should I do? Then spend 2 weeks in Unity and 2 weeks in Unreal. And then at the end of that, find what just sort of feels right to you. Likewise, if you're learning a particular art package, spend a couple of weeks playing around in it. So where should you start? Figure out what your specialization is going to be. Figure out what tools you're going to work with. Take some courses. Watch some videos on YouTube. Watch Grant Abbott's wonderful YouTube videos and play around. And then once you've watched a couple of videos and you've got a couple of ideas, then go get a course so that you've got structure and you've got a flow and you've got deadlines and you've got dates and you've got challenges and stuff. So like I'm a big believer in YouTube videos, free videos. I really like them. I watch them all the time. I've made them myself. I'm also a big believer in structured courses where you pay money. It's not a huge amount of money, pay a little bit of money. And then someone has taken often 6 months or a year to create an actual education for you where it's going from the start through the steps and they're making sure that you're learning that before you learn that, before you learn that, before you learn that. And then as you're going through that, as you're learning, make sure that you're doing things yourself. You're branching out. You're just playing around. Have fun. Just play. If you're learning Blender, just play with stuff. Like if you're learning, in the character course that you've created, Grant, we learn about an ogre, but we also learn about mechs in there, don't we? In that course. So if you're having fun doing that, then just make I'll make a mech, or maybe I'll make a mech with wheels. Maybe I'll make a mech that's got 7 heads. Like just play around with it and experiment. That's how you get better. Don't just religiously follow the course and only do what's in the course, because then you can get into that unfortunate cycle where you kind of don't really know how to do stuff. You've just followed exactly in the course. You need to actually push yourself and test yourself as well. Did I miss anything in there?
Yeah.
What
I would
you
say
add?
as well with that, don't be in too much of a rush as well. As people who start out, the expectation is, I'm going to make a triple A game and it's going to be like this instead of like this. But it's very tough. And there's huge studios, huge teams. So make sure you're not in too much of a rush, and try and, if you are in a rush, then you'll get despondent and you'll get upset and you'll drop out, as it were. So as Rick keeps saying, have fun with it. Be experimentative. Be creative.
Experimentational, I think is the word you're after there.
That's the one. So it's very important not to be in too much of a rush. And I would say as well, short courses. We've been sort of looking at short courses more recently, haven't we? And I've started to think that's a good way to go for beginners, because you get a taste of something. You get to try out certain sections or different particular parts of a program or whatever it is, and then you can jump around a bit, and you'll be jumping around loads at the start. Don't be worried about that. It's perfectly normal to do that as well. And it can be frustrating because you think, actually this program's got this, and then you jump to that one and you think, but it doesn't have this, and you jump back, and you get all sort of disorganized almost, but actually that's part of the growth. That's an important step.
Absolutely. The other tip I would give for someone who's starting off in game development and wants to be an indie game developer, or maybe, off getting a job at some point as well, that could be part of the journey, is don't start by trying to make games. And this is really counter to what everyone says. Like, how do I start? Go make games. That's what they say. The language is go make games. And I used to say that as well, go make games. Like, how are you going to know whether you like it or not unless you make games? But there's more nuance to it than that, okay? Because if you say to someone, go make games, they're going to look at it and say, okay, here's the game I'm playing on my phone, or the game I'm playing on Steam or on my console. I need to make that. And that is a dangerous thing to go and try to make because it's huge and it's big. It's got a lot of people working on it. It's complex. There's a lot of things you don't know how to do yet. So you need to make games as a general concept, but instead of trying to make a game with a start menu and with a character select and 8 different weapons and 15 different enemies and 12 different levels and 8 different features, instead of trying to do that, make moments. This is really important. Make a moment. What do I mean by a moment? Okay, you've got a character runs into a room, shoots an enemy, wins. That's a moment. You didn't need menus. You didn't need HUD or UI elements on your screen. You didn't need 8 enemies and 12 guns and all that kind of stuff. You just got one character, runs in, and learn from a tutorial how to make the character run in, shoots an enemy, and then add a little bit of flavor to it. Like have some sort of, voiceover that you've created yourself, like get to the end of the room, and you run in, okay, that's what I got to do. And you get to the end of the room, it says, well done, you got to the end of the room. You're like, yeah, I made a moment. Because games are a series of moments joined together. So if you can make one moment, then you can make a second, you can make a third, and so on. But that would be, I wish someone said that to me when I was first starting out. I didn't realize that was a thing. I thought I had to make a game. But if you give a moment to your friend or your family and you're like, hey, it takes 30 seconds, see if you can reach the end. Run, I didn't make it. Start again. Run, didn't make it. Oh, I made it. Hey, that was kind of cool. Where's the rest of it? I haven't made it yet. It's coming. Calm down.
Yeah, and I suppose those moments then build, don't they? And then
Yes.
you might get a second moment, and then it actually slowly starts to become a game. But it's
becomes a game.
I think that's great advice about the moments.
Exactly. Without the burden of trying to do all the game stuff. Just make a moment and have fun doing it. And the other thing, I said I was one last thing, but that was one last thing, is don't try to make something deliberate when you start out making it. Okay, there's a dumb way of saying just get into the engine and just play, just create, just have fun, sandbox. Get there and be like, okay, I've got a cube moving on the screen. What can I do? I'll make it bump into something. Need a bit of collision. Boom. Oh, that was kind of cool. When it bumps, what's it going to do? Oh, I'll have an explosion. Oh, hey, it was really cool. When I did the explosion, it made the cube go flying over there. Oh, what if I just dig out the ground around it? So the game becomes, when you bounce, try to not fall down the hole. Oh, that was kind of fun. But if you try to design that in your head or on paper, it's really difficult. Although I guess I just designed it in my head then. But it's easier when you're in the engine, just playing around. It's like clay. You're molding the clay instead of trying to write the document or think of the great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you said there, it took you deciding you were going to start with the cube to think of the next step with the explosion. And so you need to do that step to do the next step. And to think of it all to start with is just too mind-boggling, isn't it?
Do you find the same, like if you're modeling something in Blender, I know because you're a pro, you're like, okay, I've already sketched it up, I know what I'm going to create, and here it is, I'll make that. But do you find yourself, or maybe when you were in the earlier days, or just in general, is it a good idea to get in there in Blender and just be like, I'm just going to do some stuff and see what happens? Or do you think it needs to be a little bit more deliberate than that? Like, I'm going to make a spaceman, or is it a case of saying, I'm going to make a person, but I don't know what yet? What would your advice be for a new person getting into Blender?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think these days, because I get so many sort of briefs and then I'm doing that, but I know when I first started it was, well, how on earth do they make that amazing knight with all the armor and stuff like that? But actually, and the way I approach those models now is just to start off with one piece and then you build it up and then you build or block out the shapes and then you change those shapes and turn them into a person. So it is actually the same process as you go through, as you were just explaining there, where you start with something small and build up. It's exactly the same for pros. You start off with something small, but they know the process, so they get there quicker and they know exactly how to sort of put it together. But it is precisely the same process. So yeah, start off with something small, build it up slowly. And there's lots of sculpts that I've done where I thought, oh, what shall I do? I'll pull this out. What have we got? Especially when I'm even one of my tutorials, a successful tutorial, is the brushes in Blender. And I say, oh, and then you use this brush and you do this, and then and then at the end I start, oh, this is actually quite fun, and it turns out to be some blob monster, So yeah, you can do. It's always the same process. You start off with the small, it builds and builds and builds, and then you've got this beautiful creation. Hopefully, anyway.